1. I've wanted to talk about my night at the Lizzie Borden house for so long now. I believe it was the weekend before or after Easter of last year, 2018. One of my friends took me along on a trip to spend the night at Lizzie Borden's bed and breakfast, since we live in Massachusetts, and it sounded like a cool thing to do. We both enjoy history as well as paranormal things. She told me she had a spot open for me to go if I would like, and of course I said yes. We rented out the third floor where the maid slept. It was me, Trish, my friend who invited me, one of our mutual friends Mike, then 4 other people that only she knew, family friends of hers I think, that consisted of 2 older ladies and a boy and girl around our ages but a bit younger. Me, Trish and Mike took the maid's bedroom, while the other 4 broke up into the 2 other bedrooms. I was beyond excited knowing I was sleeping over. So how it's set up to sleep over, you can rent a room itself or rent a floor, and that is what we did. We rented the whole 3rd floor for the night. There were other people who were there the same night. They consisted of a couple that slept in the parents' room, and a small group of friends, I want to say there were 5 or 6 of them, that took Lizzie's room, her sister's room, and the spare bedroom where the stepmom was found. I do not remember fully how many people, so that was my rough guess. We only really interacted with 2 of the ladies from that group. Everyone else slept. Lame. Anyway, we get there and set up the rooms. Mike got a spare cot that he put at the foot of our bed. We walked around the house for a while until we were given the ghost tour that they do every day. This was something Trish and I knew already as we came here the year before for the tour. So while everyone else was listening in on the stories, Trish and I were taking photos. We were so curious. Now, there are famous steps that, when walked up, you can see under the bed of the spare bedroom where the stepmom was found. People who know the story, have seen the movies and documentaries, will know how this is how the stepmother was first found. Well, while the person who was conducting the ghost tour was in Lizzie's bedroom explaining a story, Trish and I decided to take photos, as you do. We didn't capture anything, but we felt a weird presence. It felt heavy. We thought it was weird, but shrugged it off and followed the tour again. Once the tour was over, everyone kind of dispersed to do their own thing. I decided to sit in the living room area where the dad was found. Trish and Mike joined me. A few other people did as well. We were all just talking, and then we thought we heard something, so we got quiet. Didn't hear anything. Then we figured, hey, it's nighttime, let's shut the lights off and just talk to the spirits. So that is what we did. I sat on the floor, we shut the lights off and started to ask questions. Then we felt heavy again. Others got freaked out and we turned the lights back on. Nothing special. Trish, Mike and I went back to the maid's room to just relax for a bit, while we just charged our phones and other things. After a while of sitting around, we heard people talking, and saw some of the group of friends who were on the 2nd floor chatting outside. We figured, oh cool, we could talk to more people, so Trish and I went down the stairs with the 2 kids our age that were on the floor with us, that I mentioned earlier. Mike decided to sleep. We came downstairs and walked into the main living room, where the dad was found, to see the couple who was staying in the parents' bedroom, playing with a frickin' Ouija board. Now normally I do not care if someone is playing with one, just so long as they are understanding what they are doing. Not these 2. Nope, they were just moving the planchette around and laughing and making a joke out of it. That did not sit well with me and Trish. We noticed 2 women sitting in the front room, so we walked past the couple and walked into the front room. We shut the door that was between the living room and the front room, so we did not have to watch the couple joke around with a Ouija board. Now I know a lot of people think the board is a joke and a game, that's fine. Trish and I, however, take it very seriously. We did not want to be a part of that. We sat in the front room for a good while, just calling out, asking questions to see if we would get any sort of response. To map out the room for you, Trish and I were on one couch against the wall. To the right of me was the door that was closed that led to the living room. To the left of Trish was a door that leads to a hall that went back into the living room, the front door, and had the stairs that went to the 2nd floor. Across from me were 2 women in chairs across the room. On the left-hand side of the room was another couch where the other 2 people from our floor were sitting. It was a pretty small sitting room, but had enough room for us all comfortably. Trish had brought her own set of dowsing rods. Now, I know before anyone says they're fake. That's fine. We wanted to try them out. I had them in my hands and holding them still. We asked for a yes, and they crossed. We asked for a no, and they pushed open. This was my first time ever using them, so I was very excited. We all tried them out and asked questions. The other two women got freaked out by them and tossed them on the floor. I picked them up and just held them for the rest of the time. I made sure my mind was clear and I was just relaxed. We went around the room asking questions and sometimes getting answers here or there. One of the women thought I was just doing it on my own, so we asked her to take a question in her mind for the spirits to answer. That way I did not know what they asked, and it would prove I was not doing it. She asked her question and they pushed together for a yes. She got freaked out because it was right. She never did tell us what the question was, but it was enough for her to understand it was not me. So we all took turns asking more questions. I felt so drained. I never felt this way before, having something feeding off my energy enough to move the rods. Trish told me how tired I looked, and my eyes looked weird, and even offered to take them from me, but I vaguely remember saying, "No, it's okay." We continued on for a while longer, till one of the women across from us decided to ask a certain type of question you should not ask spirits while there. We all told her, "Do not, please." For those of you who do not know, there have been allegations from people researching the topic of alleged abuse that might have happened between Lizzie and her father. You shouldn't bring it up there, it is disrespectful. This woman decided to ask the question. There was no movement on the rods. Only moments after, the room felt heavy. The room felt like it was full of hate. It felt like I could not breathe. It felt like the feeling you get in your chest when you stay underwater for a bit too long. It was horrifying. I felt a strong presence from behind the closed door to the right of me. I was frozen. I had no idea what to do. The same lady asked out if we should open the damn door. The rods pushed open with such force they hit my arms, meaning no. This woman would not leave it alone. She started getting up and we all asked her not to. I was not about to sit there to possibly see the axed-in face of Andrew Borden. She opens the door and this heavy feeling gets even worse. Trish and I moved quickly to the other couch where the two from our floor were. We had it. I grabbed one of their hands, Trish grabbed the other kid, and we dragged them back up to the third floor and shut our doors once back inside. I have never felt such hate and the feeling of being suffocated like I did there. Thankfully we did not see anything, the feeling was enough. We just sort of went on our phones, put on YouTube and tried to relax enough, and eventually fell asleep. The next morning we were served breakfast and talked with the other women again. They told us they didn't experience anything else, thankfully. Also remember the couple who were in the parents' bedroom and we saw messing with the Ouija board like it was a joke? That morning they were so blank-faced, quiet, did not talk to anyone, and were in a hurry to leave. A lot of us thought they had a messed up night because of it. Who knows? Either way, this was a night I will never forget. I do enjoy going to haunted places. I have gone to haunted places in Salem, Massachusetts, the Queen Mary ship, and, well, Lizzie's house. 2. Before I begin this story, I feel like it's important that I give out a few details first. So me and my 3 close friends like to drive around and walk around spooky places, as we generally get bored with our university nightlife fast, and need something to sorta excite us. All of us are also really big believers in the supernatural, and 3 out of 4 of us have experienced some sort of paranormal experience. All of us are from Malaysia, and we Malaysians tend to believe in a lot of supernatural stuff, as it is woven tight into our history and culture. Now, Malaysia had a terrible incident way back in 98 or 99, don't really remember, where 2 apartment buildings collapsed due to uneven lands. Majority of the tenants of those 2 apartments died. What's worse is that a number of them didn't die when the building crashed, but died due to a lack of oxygen. You can search it up. The building is Highland Tower. So we decided to go to an area nearby there, as the site where the tragedy happened is close enough that there are no guards to patrol. Just outside of the gates is a small neighborhood, and boy, the neighborhood is creepy. You see the area that is the rich area, and yet a good amount of the houses were empty. What's stranger was the fact that the whole neighborhood was absolutely quiet. A very uncommon thing in Malaysia, as we're loud AF. It felt as if everyone just decided to up and leave the area. So as we walked around, a couple of strange things happened. First, the dogs in the neighborhood started barking at plain air. We Malaysians believe that when dogs start to do that sort of stuff, it means that they are seeing something that we aren't able to see. So we decided to avoid any area which the dogs were barking at. It's important to note that we made a few rules before doing all this. Again, a Malaysian thing, I suppose. Number 1, don't call out real names, use nicknames. That is so any wandering spirits won't be able to latch itself to you. Number 2, don't look back if you feel a presence. This is often a big mistake. Even if you're looking behind to find nothing, you've actually just shown the spirits around you that you notice them. Number 3, don't make any remarks about strange things. We believe that if you see, hear, or smell anything strange, it's best to keep it to yourself first. If you need to tell someone, then just use hand signatures, or make some excuse to sort of hint at them. This is similar to the second one, as any remarks could easily attract unwanted attentions. As we walked through the neighborhood, we heard footsteps behind us. Remembering the rules, none of us looked back. See, the footsteps were odd, as they just sort of randomly appeared out of nowhere. The footsteps also started to get faster. So one of our groupmates, the expert we called him, led us to the exit using a shortcut as it was getting too uncomfortable. Here's where the shit happens. See, the expert is one of those guys who can see things, or at least feel it to a certain extent. Now, because we're big believers, we don't question him, we just follow, as we all want to get through this as clean as possible. See, the expert is my best friend, and he often brings me to the side to whisper to me if anything is really wrong, and close to being dangerous. The place where we parked our car was directly beneath this huge tree, so my best mate called me to the side and whispered to me, "Dude, don't panic. But when we get to the car, don't panic and make sure the others keep quiet too until we reach a place with more people. Why? There's a woman on the tree above your car. She's been looking at us since just now." Following his advice, I went on and started the car like usual, while making some small jokes, trying to take everyone else's attention away as I reversed the car. Both my mate and I noticed in the reverse camera that there was a clear shadow of a woman sitting down on top of the car. Again, not wanting to scare everyone else and to antagonize it further, we kept quiet. We went to a nearby restaurant and sat down for a while. The woman was still on the top of my car, according to my mate, and was hiding itself. The worst case scenario is that it follows us back to our university dorm and decides to latch onto one of us. So I told the guys that when we entered the car, I'm going to play a special prayers recording out loud, using the aux cord, while also reading the prayers myself. I am not a super religious person, but I do believe in God and His protection. If the plan did not work out, then we would just drive around or hang at a McDonald's until 5 a.m. That's the holy time for my religion, and the woman would disappear. We entered the car, and I immediately started playing the prayers. My mate was driving this time, as I wanted to focus fully on the prayer. The moment I started the prayer, the car got suddenly heavy, as if there was an extra passenger when there should not be any. I continued to OK the recording along the journey, and to my shame I fell asleep halfway. By the time I woke up, it was near 2 a.m., and we reached the dorms already. According to my friend, the prayers worked, but took quite a bit of time as the woman only let go as we were entering the university area. I asked if he noticed anything strange, and he said that after all three of us went to sleep, he heard someone huffing and puffing, but in an angry way. He also noticed several times the prayer recording got interrupted as the volume went up and down, as if someone was trying to purposely mess it up. Thankfully, the woman got off, and we have not since went back to the neighborhood area. Being followed once is good enough for a lifetime. 3. Back when I was about 12, me and my family went out to rural Victoria, Australian state, to see my grandpa play at a bluegrass festival. My parents, my brother, and I were staying in a caravan park in a really small town called Freeburg, while my grandparents and their friend from Holland were staying in a town not far away called Harrietville. We didn't have a caravan, so we rented a cabin, It was pretty nice and looked quite new, even though most of the furniture was like old shitty regular motel furniture. It was kind of small and cramped, but I liked the place. Except one room. My parents' room gave me the creeps. To this day, I don't know why. It wasn't that bad of a room. The furniture looked slightly older than any of the furniture in the rooms, but other than that, it was pretty cozy. But 12-year-old me knew something was messed up with this room. Every night when I was brushing my teeth, I would have my eyes fixed on the mirror at an angle so I could see my parents' room. And even when I was having a bath in the jacuzzi for the first time, I would hardly take my eyes from my parents' room. Hell, even thinking back to this cabin all these years later, my parents' room has me more scared than the actual paranormal experience I had there. The main point of this story, however, is that one night, I was arguing with my mother in the lounge room. I stormed off to my room, which was right next to my parents' room, and gently closed the door because I didn't want to annoy my mother even more. And I was just laying on my bed, still calming down after the argument, when there was a huge bang on the door. Like, I legitimately thought the door was going to break. I thought my mother had been mad after the argument, and after I stormed off, and had come up to my door and kicked it as hard as she could. But that didn't really make sense to me because my mother isn't a very large or physical woman, so her kicking the door with that much force seemed unlikely. I say kicking because if someone had punched the door hard enough to shake it the way it did, they would legitimately break their knuckles, and someone couldn't have rammed it with their shoulders or something because the hallway was far too narrow. So I called out to her and asked if she had kicked the door. She said she thought I had. I believed her when she said she didn't hit it because I have never known my mother to lie about anything. She had even confessed to me she felt a bit guilty about telling me and my brother that Santa existed because it wasn't true. I hesitated and said no, I didn't kick the door. Then she hesitated, and said something about how old houses sometimes do weird things. And she sort of trailed off. I accepted this as an answer because I was 12 and naive. On the long drive home from Freiburg, back to our home state, she said something like, "How about that scary door?" And I asked her, wasn't it just because the house was old and stuff? And she said she had just told me that to keep me calm because it scared the shit out of her, and she apparently couldn't sleep for the rest of the trip. I genuinely can't think of something that would have caused this, and the fact that neither of my parents could think of anything logical and factual to explain this spooks me even more. If anyone knows of anything that may have caused something like this, please say so in the comments. 4. It's been over 10 years since all of this happened, but I still remember it vividly. My ex-girlfriend rented a 2-bedroom house in what I call the halfway hood with a friend. Not a very good neighborhood, but it was cheap to rent. I would occasionally stay the night, and after about a week of dating, I started hearing the stories about a figure that was seen by both of the girls living there. First experience was when I was being intimate with my girlfriend, and there was a reflection off the light of the TV that was on a glass picture on the wall. Usually the reflection is just that of the dresser and the light from the TV, but this time, it looked like an older man wearing an A-shirt with suspenders and a hat, like you would see a man wear in the 30s or 40s. This startled me as I thought there was a person outside watching us, so I sprung up, and when I changed angle on the picture frame, the outline stayed there. It's strange to me, but it was just like a blurry outline where I could make out the shape and some minor details. The girls always saw it out of the corner of their eye, but never got a good look at him. I started seeing the guy often, as I was there a lot, and sometimes I was there by myself, but he never scared me. Surprised me a few times, but I didn't feel threatened. I even named him Bob, and would talk to him often, never getting a response, but I figured if there is some old man ghost stuck here, it's most likely boring, so I would bullshit with him. I smoked pot at the time. I would always offer to pass Bob or blow a cloud where I would see him out of the corner of my eye. When I was drunk eating fries or tater tots, I'd always set one on the table I saw him around the most, and would tell him, "This is for you, Bob." The girls hated that I did all this, but again, I kinda felt bad, so I did it anyways. After this, I was intrigued but not scared. Didn't get any bad vibes. Even with a ghost watching me and my girlfriend, I didn't care. Then the activity got a boost when the girls were investigating the house, and found there was a secret attic that had been painted over, and they opened it up, and all that was up there was a pull-string light, a chair, a tattered stained doll, and some newspaper on the floor that was from the 60s. The girls decided that night, when they had friends over, to try to summon the spirit in the house with a Ouija board in the attic. They said they tried to use the doll as a reference point to draw in the spirit. I don't know what that meant, because I'm pretty sure one of the people over was into reading witchcraft, and it was their idea. Well, they drew a pentagram, put candles in each point, and used the Ouija board. After a few minutes of nothing happening, they started to mock it, challenge it, insult it. The board never responded to anything they tried, but the last taunt was about if it wanted them to leave, the spirit should make them leave. Next thing, the light burned out, so only the candles for light. Then each candle tipped over and went out, even though they were not touched. I equate this to people moving around all at once on the plywood that made up the floor. Everyone pulled out their phones. Mind you, these were not smartphones, old flip phones, so not much light. All decided that they were done, but could not get the retractable ladder to open. This was spring-loaded and didn't take much to open from the bottom, but they were stuck for a good 10 minutes in there trying to open it. Each person was now huddled around the ladder using the light from the phones and lighters to see why this won't open, and because everyone claims they felt like there was something in the corner of the attic in the shadows, where a cell phone light wouldn't reach. They finally got it open and all left the attic, and started hearing noises like clicks and small impacts all around the attic area. Each person left except my girlfriend and her roommate, and they got ready to go to bed around 12 p.m. 3 a.m. hits, and I get frantic phone calls waking me up. I had to work the next day at 9 a.m. The girls were crying, saying they were on the front lawn and would not go back inside until I got there. So I drove the 10 minutes over there, and the girls are on the front lawn still freaking out. They told me all that happened, going into extreme detail, and made me go in by myself. And when I went in, it felt very different. It was like suffocating, a heavy feel to it. Even though it was a decent temperature inside, it was like there was a resistance in the house, like charged air. Also, all of the cupboards were opened, all of the lights were on, and there was a sound to me that resembled a ball rolling from one side to the other in the attic, and occasional rustling noises. All of the water was running too. Bathroom sink and shower and kitchen, so I go room to room, talking to Bob, telling him I'm sorry that they were disturbing him and that was not right on their part, but it will not happen again. I went outside and got the girls, and when we went back inside, all the cupboards were open again and the kitchen sink was running, so I turned it all off and closed them again. Then the clicking and ball rolling started again, and the girls freaked out that I never checked the attic. So I went up to the attic. The clicking I was hearing was the light cord which was swinging around when I got up there. The rolling was one of the candles, and the rustling, I think, was the newspaper. When I went up there, the light was off. I pulled the string and the light turned on. One candle was standing still, so I guess they didn't knock over all of them. But the doll was right back under the light, and not in the pentagram. The whole time I kept feeling drafts pass me, which I do admit weirded me out a bit. Then, after hearing something skittering around in the dark, narrow part of the attic, that I couldn't see even with the light on, I wiped the chalk star off the floor, put the chair back in its original position by the doll, turned off the light, and closed it back up. When I went back downstairs, the cupboards were open again, lights were all on, and the noises resumed upstairs, which was strange, because I brought down the candles, so I have no idea what was rolling around. I finally made the girls apologize to Bob for being rude, and that they would not do this again. Then I went to sleep with the girl on both sides of me clutching me since they were scared. The only other thing I saw that night was Bob's dark outline watching us sleep. Activity went back to normal after that night, where Bob was there, but he didn't do much than appear out of the corner of your eye. But the girls ended up moving out a few weeks later due to other weirdness of the humankind, involving a stolen shotgun, stolen rings, and a whole drawer of panties which were also stolen. 5. In 2012, I was just a regular college kid. I'd had a couple of paranormal experiences, but despite this, I had a skeptical attitude toward the paranormal. Then I found out I was pregnant. My boyfriend and I decided to get married and started looking for a place to live. Amazingly, we found a duplex just a block from my parents' house that allowed dogs and was super cheap. If you've ever watched The Haunting, you know where this is going. But at the time, we were just relieved to find a place we could afford. The only strange thing was how many people quickly moved in and out of this particular unit, while the same guy had lived downstairs for a decade. We'd only lived there a couple of weeks when I asked my husband if he'd moved something of mine. When he said no, I jokingly said, "Maybe we have a ghost." My husband froze. I asked him what was wrong. He said he hadn't wanted to scare me, but the other night while we were having sex, he had looked up to see what looked like a man standing in the other room. Probably not the guy from the last story. He said he'd gotten up to find no one there. I was a little creeped out, but since I hadn't seen anything, I told myself it was all in his head. The next few months were busy with getting ready for the baby, and we didn't notice any activity. In October, our son was born, and we were too busy adjusting to parenthood to think about ghosts. My iPod went missing, but we assumed it had been stolen. On Christmas morning, I put the baby on our bed and went to help my husband with breakfast. We heard the baby cry and both rushed back to check on him. He was an extremely fussy baby who never stopped crying on his own, so we were shocked when he suddenly stopped crying. We were both standing in the doorway and watched in awe as we saw him interacting with something we couldn't see. He was looking at something, and then started laughing and reaching toward it. We watched this go on for a couple minutes. Around this time, we had to get a new mattress. When we took the old one off, we found my stolen iPod in the middle of the box spring. I still can't think of any explanation for how it got there. Weird things started happening more often after this. I became terrified to be home alone. Once while home alone, I was sitting in the living room. A rock was thrown at me. I checked and no one was there. Once it was a ghostly hand reaching around the doorframe. As my son got older, he started to talk to someone named Boo. Someone asked him who he lived with, and he replied, "Mama, Daddy, Puppy, and Boo." Sometimes I'd see him try to hand toys to someone I couldn't see, and then get upset when the toys fell to the ground. Once I was giving him a bath, and he looked up and excitedly exclaimed, "Boo!" while pointing up. I stood up trying to see what he was pointing at, only to find nothing but a pocket of ice-cold air in an otherwise steamy bathroom. Things would constantly go missing in that house, only to show up in places we'd already looked. It drives us crazy, and added to our already strained relationship, we started to argue constantly. My husband became paranoid and accused me of all sorts of things. This house had a basement, and we kept our washer and dryer down there. It always creeped me out. So I liked to have our dog keep me company when I did laundry. One night I was putting clothes in the dryer when I heard my dog growl. I looked up to see him growling at a dark corner of the basement, when all of a sudden he's knocked backwards and yelps. He gets up and runs whimpering up the stairs, and I ran after him. My son and I moved out of that house when my husband and I decided to get divorced. Thankfully, we haven't experienced any paranormal activity where we live now. Interestingly, after my ex moved out of that house, our relationship improved a lot. We went from barely speaking to now being friends and successfully co-parenting. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 154. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Okay, figures, after I'm done with the video, I'm feeling more in the mood and physically able to record. Sometimes you sit down and maybe you've been enjoying a nice can of... Well, see, here's the thing. As some of you may know, I'm Scottish. And in Scotland we have a drink called Iron Brew, which, it's not my favourite thing in the world, but sometimes I do like to partake. Except they changed the recipe recently and they've started putting artificial sweeteners in the regular one like they do with most soft drinks, so I thought, well, okay, I'm never buying that again, because it messes up my throat. However, they introduced an Iron Brew energy drink recently, and the regular variety, not the diet one, but the regular one doesn't use artificial sweeteners. And I tried it, and it's rather nice. And it doesn't really mess up my throat much, but it's not something you should be drinking just before you do a recording. Except sometimes you'll guzzle one down when it's late at night to give you a bit of energy so you can record. Whereas ideally you should probably have either water, always good, or maybe tea with honey in it, or I need to get more because I've got some in the cupboard that's been there for about 2 years when I think about it. I'll need to throw that out. Or something called throat coat tea. That is actually really helpful recording. Okay, that's enough mumbling from me for now, I think. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.